Thanks for all being here. Considerations of any changes, additions, or renewals or removals to the agenda? Yes.
Just a number change. In the Vermont Family Medical Leave Act, the agenda says 0.0044%. It's actually 0.44% is the tax rate for
0.44%.
So if you just did the actual number, it's 0.0044, but it's on a percentage, yeah.
We put the percentage on there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Move it to
understood. Okay, so do we have to vote on that, or is that just, it's just a conservative?
Just a typo.
Okay.
Just a typo.
Okay. Approval of minutes from previous meetings, April 25th, 2024, a regular meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as proposed, as drafted.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. B, approval of minutes for May 2nd, 2024, the special meeting.
Make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Accepted. Comments from ratepayers.
We'll sign the book when we think about it.
There's gonna be one.
It's not me.
Superintendent's report.
I have questions.
Oh, wait a minute.
Comments from
I did,
Yeah,
comments from
you were
ratepayers.
sidetracked.
Oh, okay, sure, sorry.
All right, Kathy Grant from Orion Ave. So we put in solar 3 years ago, so I'm one of those problem people. This is Michael?
Yes.
Oh, nice to meet you finally.
Yeah.
So it's been confusing for me, and Michael's been great about trying to coach me through this. I'm still confused about how the rates work and how the systems work. So unfortunately, I'm an accountant, CPA, retired by background, so I got a little curious about other things, which is not sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. So the first thing I was looking for was a financial statement, and in the last book for annual report I have is 2022. Is that the last one?
The 2023 is not out yet.
Okay. And it says in there that the full audit is available at Pond Street, but I figured I won't bother you until the 2023 is out. So I was wondering how much longer that's going
The
to be.
2023 full audit is available.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay,
full
so
audit.
I can still stop by. Do I need to call ahead of time?
Probably be better if you called ahead of time.
Somebody said-
But you can stop by if you happen to be going through.
Okay. So I'll make this quick because I know you guys haven't met in a while. So again, the way my brain works, I go back and I look at prior years compared to 2022, and I see like big changes and big increases in G&A, and I'm not sure what some of these line items actually mean. Distribution was one of them. So, and I saw a lot of increases in what I would call G&A expenses, and I'm just curious how that's monitored, who does that, how that all works, and I figure I'll get some of these answers out of the 2023 financial audit. I wanted to know what the long-term infrastructure budget is and where we're going. I had an issue with having to have a transformer put in outside my house because we were putting a car charger in, and I was first given a very large amount that we were going to be charged.
That was me who did that by mistake.
Okay, that's all right. But that started my thinking about what our infrastructure is. Then I looked at the net fixed assets, and I'm noticing it's kind of low, and are we doing anything to update the system? So I've got like a whole bunch of these kind of questions, and I don't know if you want them all now or you want to wait until you've had a time to meet, and you're probably looking at a lot of this stuff as it is.
Maybe you should get our year-end report to start with and then go from there.
Okay, so like one of the big things is that in 2022, there was $5 million plus in cash and $5 million in investments. And are we going to start putting this money into the infrastructure? And why did we have a loss in 2022? Because we weren't charging enough. I know we've got a 2% increase and blah, blah. So I think 2023 will help me, but I've got like a whole page of questions. So
You can stop in the office and Michael and I could sit down with you too and go
Yeah,
over
and
your
those are
questions.
very detailed questions.
Yeah.
And accountant to accountant, we
Yeah, we
can
can talk
answer them
in
for
language.
you.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm happy to hear your questions, because I'd like to look into this as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
And
I was
write them,
just-
put them in writing and give them to the commissioners, and then we can sit down with you and go through them, yes.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that maybe Kathy, you could email them
Okay.
and then copy the board. That way, Michael or Tom can respond to you and copy the board as well. So that would save us having to,
Okay. Okay.
how's that work?
That's fine. Are the email addresses on the website?
They are.
Yeah,
So I was talking to Tom because, the website doesn't even have the right address for this meeting. So I just want to make sure, we've got 2 new board members, right? I want to make sure all the email addresses are on the website.
The email addresses should be up to date
Okay.
on the website, yes.
Okay. And I'll probably call next week to come and see you
Yep.
and look through the
so
financials.
that way it streamlines
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And we're all
That's
in
fine.
the loop and we'll get the answers as well from Tom.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks.
Deal with it.
Any other ratepayers?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's,
Is that too much?
that's great.
Yeah, it's too
I
loud.
feel a little loud.
The microphones
It's
aren't
loud.
gonna work.
That one.
The
Jay,
microphones aren't gonna work with
it's
that.
too loud.
Too loud?
Yeah.
As long as the microphone can hear us.
Okay. Moving on, superintendent's report.
Okay, for the month, we had one streetlight maintenance repair for the new board. Most of everything's been updated to LED. It's just some of the private sector that still has some of the old streetlights, so we still have a little bit of maintenance on them. Meter reading, for the month, we completed today. Substation maintenance, monthly checks. We received 6 new regulators for the Howard Barton Junior sub. I need to schedule those to install. We upsize them just for future stuff that's going on. Underground locates, there was 22 for the month. Line maintenance, took old 103 line down between East Hill and the Point, the cross country. We had 3 outages for the month, 2 were the similar instance on Parker Ave and Andover Street. We found the issue after the second time around. Car pole accident on 131, we replaced the pole. Services, new service on Ellison Lake Road and Lathrop Loop. 2 service removals on Depot Street in Parkersville. 1 new solar on High Street. Been doing some line trimming, Maple Lane and Johnson Loop. Vehicle maintenance, L32 bucket. Had a control issue and need to order a new control part for that, but it's up and running. The safety meeting for the month was personal protective equipment and shop and office maintenance, lawn mowing, weed whacking, weed killing.
Okay, thank you. Manager's report.
Okay. Well, staff has been continually working on training for the NISC 2 platforms. We have the new GIS system and the inventory system, and we're now both live on both of those platforms.
What is the GIS system?
That's the map.
Oh, no, I just mean like what's the platform?
Oh, it's NISC.
It's an Emory's-based platform.
Is it able to integrate with the like ArcGIS with the platform that the state runs? Do you know?
I don't know about
I
integrating.
think we can get a file that we can send up to
Yeah, like a
them
layer.
that will integrate it, yes.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because they're using, it's a Emory's-based system, and the ArcGIS is Emory's-based.
Yeah.
So we should be able to get a file that we can send right up to them, no problem.
Not that I don't know what they track or have on their side. I work a lot with GIS and for other reasons, mostly road maintenance. But I'm curious about, what we're using for here and what.
That's all our lines, all our
Everything's
infrastructure.
mapped and
Yep.
inventory,
And
repairs.
it's all interconnected to our billing system, to our customer information system, so when they call up a transformer out on the field on the iPad, they can tell them that customer, these 4 customers are connected to that transformer.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you use it with your? I'm assuming too. It feeds back into like work orders, and you can take out work orders on specific parts.
Oh, yes.
And it's all.
Yeah, we're learning all that.
Everybody's tabs.
We're learning that.
We're learning all that stage right now.
Yep, they'll create the work orders, so if a transformer gets changed out in the field, they put it in, close the work order, send it back, we get that information back in the main CIS system, already there.
Nice. Nice.
And that's ongoing, that training, we're
Yeah.
in the very early stages of being live with it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to stop down and
Sure.
play with it a little bit.
FEMA update, we're still dealing with these last 2 applications. We're on our 3rd project manager with FEMA. On 6/24 of this year, we received that full payment on our first application, $54,776. We're still waiting for the final contractor estimates and additional costs to be completed on the 2 open projects that we still have open. But these should be filed with FEMA by the end of August.
Do you mind if I interrupt? Just
Sure.
what are the values on those last 2 remaining projects?
The larger one, which is the 103 swath of the line, is 400-ish.
473,000.
And the one with the mill is gonna be close to 100.
Yeah, somewhere between, depending upon how our contractor comes in,
Came in at 35.
35.
That's not site work, that's not the concrete, now I gotta figure that, so.
Okay,
So
so,
it'll be 100-ish.
yeah, it's gonna be right around 100,000 for that.
Good.
Now, FEMA hasn't said they're definitely gonna give us anything for those yet, but we are gonna submit them.
Good.
Just a quick update on the financials. As of May, we're showing a loss of $586,000. And once again, the driving factor on that is power costs, which are up $134,000 over last year at this time.
And here's the financials. There's 3 of them there. That's year-to-date for May.
We filed our 23 SQRP report, and it shows a penalty of $47.98, and this was a result of a car accident that we had, which put 123 customers out of service for 5.5 hours, 5.25 hours. So we wrote a check for that. On our Stonehouse Solar project, tonight, General Manager from VEPSA, Ken Nolan, is with us, and he'll be discussing the proposed solar power agreement with the board and the ratepayers. Any questions?
I have a question regarding FEMA. Is there a deadline to submit?
There is a deadline, but it's, I want to think.
I'm
it's-
asking, Tom. I can't hear you, Tom.
I think we have a deadline, but it's quite a few months out.
Okay, just maybe don't lose track of that. Could
Oh,
you find out
no,
what that is and let me know?
We're very
and
close
I'll
to getting
write
this
it
thing
down.
out the door.
Okay. And I just have another question, but it's just a request, is in the future, can you submit the reports via email before the meeting? Then we'll have them. So if there are any questions, we can think about it ahead of time.
Sure.
Thanks.
Are you sworn in now? Did you get sworn in?
Did
Have
I?
to be here.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say. But
Yeah, nobody
Now, wait a minute.
notified us.
why are you asking me that question?
I knew you
Tom?
weren't when I went in last time.
Yeah, and
When was that?
nobody notified
days
us that
ago?
you had been
A few
sworn in.
days ago? Oh, keeping track of me? Oh.
No, I just wanted to make sure you were signed in.
If I wasn't, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay. Just curious.
And here's, those are income statements I gave you. Those are balance sheets there.
You got another income statement?
Yeah, now, I did do something up. This is our income statement year-to-date versus what we have in our system right now for a budget. This has not been fully authorized, but I wanted to show you an analysis that was all in. That's yours.
So you got an income statement?
And you took my other copy earlier. So here's that.
Should get Kathy one
Kathy will send you oh. Yes, yes. I didn't get enough copies, sorry. And I can send them electronically if anybody wants them.
Account number 923.1, it says operating expenses legal. What was that?
There's a number of different pieces that go into that.
I
our-
notice it's $26,000.
Right. There is legal expenses for our rate case filings, legal expenses for our union negotiations.
Okay. Maybe to save time, if you could email me a breakdown of that, and also a breakdown, I think I asked you for this before, the invoice or the breakout for the CDA.
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
And I had that ready to send to you, but I was waiting for confirmation of that you had been sworn in. Nobody ever gave us confirmation. So I have it ready to send to you,
confirmation for what?
that you had been sworn in. Because the last time I knew, you had not been sworn in, so I didn't want to send
Well, you
anything
maybe
without
should
that
ask me,
confirmation.
and I could go. That's okay.
Good.
Just send it to me tomorrow.
Okay. And so I had no confirmation.
But you do now.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on, current financial report.
I just handed that to you, so I was a little bit ahead of you, sorry.
Okay. All right, let's go into discussions of spending limits.
Oh, that's the other thing I did. That is really a purchase order spending limit. When I asked about that, because we have in our system, we put in what everybody is allowed to, what they can spend. And I just want a documentation that says this position can spend this much money, or this
Single purchase
position-
limit.
A single purchase limit for each person.
Correct. So something I wanted to discuss with the board about that, superintendent and office manager, in my opinion, should be the people that are allowed to have a spending limit. At this point, who does have spending limits and what are they?
Right now, because of the way we had originally set up the system with Brian in mind, that position has a $200 spending limit. I have a 5,000.
Superintendent?
Yep, no, not it was foreman, or not foreman, but director of operations, whatever it is. We set him up with a $200 limit. I just moved that over into Brett for convenience. I have a $5,000 limit, and Tom is unlimited.
Tom is
Unlimited.
limited.
Yeah, anything over $5,000 has to go through Tom.
What kind of things might be over 5,000?
Well, we just purchased a transformer, 2,000 kVA transformer for $94,000. We created the PO for the transformer. We didn't actually purchase it, but we created the purchase order.
Can expenses over $5,000 be presented to the board ahead of time for approval? That would seem to me to be reasonable. That's my personal.
Yeah, no, it can be done,
Okay,
yes.
I make a motion, we do that.
Okay, then we would have to have a board meeting more often than once a month. Because we have to get these orders in.
Then you can email to the chairman, and I think you could work that out with the chairman. I
I'm
think
just
there's
looking
a
at-
way we can make it work. Off the
As
top
long
of
as you
my
can get it
head.
approved quick. That's the
Shouldn't be
goal.
wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we can do it through email. I will, I'll second the motion so that we can discuss it, because we need that to happen. As far as discussion, I feel like I wonder if that, I'm not sure if 5,000 is the right level. I do think, I do wonder about like the $94,000 purchase. I feel like I would imagine this board, wanting to look at that and review that before the check went out. I think that in my experience on the select board in the past, there is a system of, having warrants in a place that we can come through and, select board members regularly just come by and look at the warrants and sign off on things. And as soon as it has, in this case, 2 signatures, that purchase is good to go out the door. And so I wonder if there's a system like that where we could set up, warrants to be able to be signed off on.
One thing on this transformer is actually being built out, so it's not an expense to Ludlow Electric. It is
right. I
coming out
happen
of
to use
it.
that as an example, but that one we're gonna bill out to a
Yeah.
kilo.
I mean, if it was something, I wouldn't think that you really need to have approved that as much as if we were doing something in the sub that was an expensive Ludlow Electric that we would.
If it comes out of the general fund balance.
And just so we don't have warrants in our accounting system. Because
Right.
we're not a municipal accounting system, we're a FERC-based accounting system. So they don't use warrants,
Yeah, it's not quite the same.
no. We can have checks a check register, these are the checks we're thinking about writing, and have that out available for signatures.
To try to get approval before purchase.
Yeah, approval before a purchase order is created once. Yeah, because we're trying to get a purchase order system in place, which we didn't have until just recently.
The reason I made the motion is, well, there's a couple of reasons. Because this is a new board, and I feel, this is my feeling, anybody can disagree with me. We're new here, we want to know what's going on with Ludlow Electric. As you've stated many times, we kind of seem to be going backwards here. And so I think people are interested in trying to help and see if there are ways that we can streamline some things and make it transparent to the board and the ratepayers what's going on. And when you come, like you did just now, which I'm totally floored about, asking or stating that there's going to be a $94,000 purchase, and at least, of course, since I've been on the board, I don't know anything about it. So I think we need to come up with a process so that items get presented to the board before they're paid, before they show up in a report.
Okay, so thinking about how our purchase order system is structured
Right.
and how we can get this done. I don't disagree with you. I'm just
Okay.
trying to figure out the mechanics.
Right,
of
but
getting
you know
it
what,
done.
you can do that, you don't have to do it tonight, but hopefully by the next board meeting, you can present something to the board where you've changed it so that it can happen. That's my motion, I'm sticking
We
to
could
it.
have somebody come in and see how the purchase order process works. And maybe a certain phase of it, it could go to the commissioners for a review or an approval.
Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose and my, again, I'm not sure that I will necessarily support at the $5,000 limit. I think that feels a little low maybe, but I think that my thinking is that, I mean, purchases at a certain amount that we set, I would want to see that the board has looked at it, at least 2 members, before that money goes out the door. And so, I think the warrant process, the way that works with, the select board and the trustees, I think that, that's what I'm imagining in my head, just like a way that we can come in, we can go to a place, however it's presented, whether you call it warrants or whatever else.
Well, I just had a thought on that, because I thought of a mechanics that may work for us. We do requisitions in the system. And then we take those requisitions to create the purchase orders. If we stop at that point, print out the requisitions, anything over whatever dollar limit you want, and have those set aside for the board to review. But again, we'd have to do it that we may call up once a week or once every 2 weeks and say we got some requisitions that need signing. That's the piece that you guys have to work out, how you want to do that.
That would not be.
That is something we've discussed in the past as well,
We can do that.
working on that.
So we'll stop at the
We
requisition level.
could
yeah.
send you an email on any requisitions at XYZ value and over.
Yeah, I mean, that's how.
Any and all.
Picture this.
And if after 5 days or 6 days, if nobody says anything, we consider the requisition okay. That way you wouldn't have to trouble yourself with stopping in and saying, this one's good, this one's good, this one's good. This
That,
one's
for me personally, that's not gonna be trouble,
good. Okay,
because I
Yeah.
wanna learn how it works.
sure.
Yeah, I think I'd default to, I think needing confirmation or approval by 2 members, I would prefer that as opposed to just as opposed to denial. I think you want to see the 2 people have said like, no, we're okay with this going forward.
Okay, it's
Fine.
we can stop at the requisition point, not create the purchase orders, and then put a bunch of them together and say, all right, we have these, and email them to you, then you can come in and sign them at your leisure. Will that?
We'll work on a couple of methodologies and see if we can present to you something that,
Yeah.
here's what we think will work, here's what we think could work also, that kind of thing.
So, let me get this straight. So, Brett's spending limit is $200, Mike's is $5,000, and yours is unlimited.
In the current system, the way it's set up right now, yes. And that's why I've asked way back when that we try to adjust something. Because I had nothing to go by for guidelines. So we needed to set something up when we were setting the system up, so that's what we set up.
So we talked about one specific expense, a couple, you kind of brought up, but can we just, maybe just elaborate a little bit more, Brett, like what are your, like normal day-to-day, like you need to go down to the valleys or something and pick something up, like what's
I mean, it's not uncommon for me to do over 5,000 if I was to order some pole mount transformers for stock or.
Yeah, a single pole mount transformer is $4,000.
Yeah, depending on what they are, anywhere from 2,800 to.
Yeah, I guess that's what
7,000.
are the regular, so, I mean, you're signing off on anything that's over 5, but what are the daily, like you need to go down and pick up equipment or you have a daily expense, like what are those expenses reasonably like?
And those types of expenses don't run through our purchase order system. They can go down and get anything they need for supplies from the valleys, from Abishans. They don't run through our purchase order system. Only large purchases and inventory purchases go through the purchase order system.
Nuts and bolts.
Right.
Anything.
I guess I'm just,
Your day-to-day stuff isn't a lot, but, if I'm calling the supply house and ordering stuff,
Yeah.
it can range. I mean, product cost today is just stupid. So if we've got a project, it's not uncommon to have well over 5,000 to order material for a project.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you're ordering that, you need approval from Tom
Right.
as of now.
As
Yeah.
of now. I didn't have that before.
So when you put in this new system, you randomly came up with these numbers based on past practice or
Yeah.
whatever. Can we put,
Not past practice, just anything under, there's so many things that the transformers are $4,000 each.
right, understand?
We just needed to come up with something. And having never had any kind of system like this before, Tom and I talked about it and we thought this level would be good. Because Brian was in the position back then, we didn't want to give him as much of a spending limit.
But now there's somebody in that
Right,
position that has had that experience.
But I had asked the board back then to set these limits, way back when.
So,
They never got to it.
but now we're a new board and we'll get to it.
Yeah, that's what I've been waiting for.
And
Yeah.
for myself, I just need till the next meeting to think about the spending limits and how that might
Okay.
work.
Yeah, it would be
And
good.
in the meantime, I'll stop by and look at some of the expenses that you have so I can get a feel for what is a monthly, well, and you've already given us this report. So it's some kind of idea of the amount of money that's going out every month. So can we table this till next month?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that same thing. I mean, maybe, for now, obviously we have a motion on the table that's like 5,000, but I think my thought would be I'd like to understand what you would think, like if we want to set up a process where you would think those values would be, and what your proposal would be. Maybe we can, maybe more like Gene's talking about, just kind of, our thoughts. Maybe we can not have something, pass, like a motion passed tonight, but kind of implement this system in theory and see how it plays out over the month until we actually make it, the actual status quo.
Let me just say this, and then I'll consider withdrawing the motion for next month when we have more information regarding dollars and cents. But I wanted to have it be on the record that as far as new positions or salary adjustments that aren't automatic, that those new positions and adjustments to salaries be presented to the board ahead of time. Not necessarily for approval, but be presented to certainly a new position would be for approval. But I just want the board to be able to have a heads up when something new is happening that hasn't happened in the past. So with that being said, if it's appropriate, I'll withdraw my motion so that we can get more information for next month and formalize the motion regarding spending limits and items that need permission from the board beforehand. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
And I'll draft something and just have it ready for the next meeting.
You said there was a completed audit,
Every year.
and so were there any specific recommendations around this process in the audit report?
No.
No?
Did the board at the time get the audit report?
I believe they did, yes.
Okay. Since I wasn't on the board and Logan was, did you get a copy of the audit?
I looked at it in the office when I had done a site visit
We
there.
can
We get
send you-
electronic files.
We can send you a PDF
Yeah,
file.
could
on it.
could we all get
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
Now, regarding the spending limits, I do see, and this is my bad, my mistake, I put spending limits on the agenda twice. We had
I did
discussions.
catch that, I meant to.
That'll
So-
shorten up the agenda.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna get right into that. So as of now, we're gonna stick to what we have. We'll get the information and
And I'll
next
draft a
meeting
motion.
we can discuss that, okay. Excellent. Okay, donations of light to lamp posts. And I give you guys this. So Andy and Meredith, they are both local village residents. They have proposed they would like to donate lights for each of the lamp posts on every bridge. I believe she said there was
50.
15
Yeah, from
poles.
bridge to bridge.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that means from Vale Bridge down to Walker.
I believe so. So she did say she spoke to Brian Benoit about it and possibly spoke to you about it.
Anyways, is it, just fill me in, is this the antique light bulb?
Yes,
Once
the
a
black
while?
posts that
No, they
are,
don't want more posts, they want to be able to wrap them
they
with
want
lights.
to light
So
them
we
I'll
all.
wrap them
So
with
we
the
need to
Christmas
put,
lights.
we'll need to put, like they did on the ones over here in front of the mill.
Okay.
Streetscapes has paid for those, but the only thing is these posts don't have outlets, which we'd have to put.
We'd have to put wire
Oh,
on
I
outlets.
see.
No, we wouldn't have to bring, there's power. 'Cause you
There's-
power
yeah,
off,
there's
you
power.
power off the wires that feed the
Okay.
lights, so they would come on and off with
Yeah.
the motion sensor.
And
The
it would be,
recommendation is that they would be solar powered, but, or, at least in this proposal, she's saying that they would supply it, but they don't have the equipment to actually hang them, so they would be looking to the electric light department board with village.
I understand there's only 8 of those special poles. That's what we bill monthly for those. Is there more than that?
I thought there was 8 too. In her
Yeah.
email, she said 15, so I can look into
Yeah,
that.
because we only bill for 8.
Is she talking about the special poles or?
I think they're
Just the
they're all-
Or the poles between the bridges.
Yeah.
Although, okay, not all of those are special poles, okay,
That's how she's getting.
Every pole
Okay.
between the bridge, between
Yeah.
the bridges.
okay.
So they'd like to donate the lights, whether it be, and I did speak to them, whether it be solar or electrical. In your opinion, what do you think would be a better suit for
Really,
those?
I would want to see what they're considering for solar and what it would take, because you don't want to take it away from the light posts. You can put an outlet on it, plug them in, and have a lot less impact on the light posts, that's all. I don't know what kind of panel you're gonna need to run them
Yeah,
lights.
how much power they would need, and what size panel you would need, and how obtrusive that panel would be, and, yeah.
If you're doing it on the, in theory, if you're doing it on the south side, or the
Take a fair amount of wind, so it's
south side of the street, and there's much
probably hard to
sun.
mount solar to the post anyway.
Yeah. You don't get as much sun in all the buildings, especially with
Yeah.
DJs.
Right.
You're not gonna get sunlight on it.
And she had said either, whether it be
Yeah,
electric or
yeah.
solar. But I think that would be nice, breaking up the town a little bit. We do live in a ski village and it is a sleepy one.
So we could do figure out how many hours we would need to do that, any equipment and materials, and then we can do a proposal on how much it would cost to get the poles ready for those lights.
So maybe
Make
Brett
ready work.
could work with Meredith and come up with something and present at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it, but I understand you have to do a little research, so,
And you did go take a look at them?
okay.
So we can get an estimate of the make ready work, how much it would cost us to get it ready for the lights.
Right.
But that's part of what I've just asked them to do.
Right.
Okay, restructuring a position, Director of Operations, Brian Benoit, Head Electrician. I've had a few conversations with Brian about this. He is a licensed electrician now. I know in our last meeting, we discussed the position of Director of Operations. That position requires, as said, to have a bachelor's degree. It is a position in line above office manager. We're not going to be changing anything with rate of pay. It is just a job title change. Now, I know something was said about the union, and that's why you had made the decision to change him from foreman to Director of Operations. It had to do with union.
They suggested that title because they needed the foreman title.
They needed the foreman title
For
as one of their
Right.
job.
Yeah.
Brett knows what.
Foreman is a title for union negotiations for his placement
and they needed that title for
for one of the other guys. So,
I did ask Brian to give me a job description of what a head electrician for Ludlow Electric Light Department would entail. He said he would email that to me. I have not received that yet. Giving him that title, he is an electrician. But I guess I have the question on where would that fall under our chain of command, superintendent, office manager? Where would an electrician fall under? Would that be under the superintendent? What, do you have any thoughts on that?
it's probably not a bad fit for him. There's a bunch of different stuff other than electrical that he will be doing. Metering.
If you need a motion, or it's just a suggestion that Brett outline or draft a job description for head electrician for Brian, and draft it just like all the other job descriptions are drafted. And at the same time, because at least in what I was given, there wasn't a job description for the superintendent, so maybe you could draft that at the same time and present it at the next meeting. And we'd have job descriptions and duties for superintendent and head electrician.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've all discussed prior to getting together, Tom getting together a job description for everyone in the office and Brett getting one for everyone in the shop.
That makes
And having
sense.
just a solid description, we can go by, we have it in writing. I think that would behoove us to have all of that information.
And I did see job descriptions for the office that were they clearly said draft on them. So if Brett could just develop those for what we just talked about, and for the other folks that are in the out in I was going to say the real world, but I guess we all are there. So, and then we can consider those and approve the job titles next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree with that.
That makes sense.
So that's something you can give for us?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, we're gonna kick the spending limits. A budget update, please.
Okay. I've got two different forms for the budget. Pass that over to them. This is a budget in the same format as the income statement I just gave you. And that's a more detailed of the same budget. This one. No, keep that one, that's you. And that's all three for them. This is our budget. And when the income statement I sent you earlier that's actuals to budget is compared to this budget right here. And what I've done on the more detailed line, I have the account number and then the activity code within each of those account numbers. So like for account 403, taxes other than income, we have our utility, our water bill from the town. We have our property tax, we have our payroll taxes, we have our fuel tax, and our gross revenue tax, all in one account, but 5 different activities.
Thank you for breaking that down.
And I did that going all the way down through every account.
Okay. So on your year-to-date budget, is that the proposed budget?
Which, the
Do we have a
year-to-date version 8,
proposed budget?
does that say V8 on it?
Yes.
That's the budget, that's the proposed budget right there.
The proposed.
And this is the same thing, but more detailed.
I see, yeah. So the V8 budget is the budget that has not been approved yet,
Yeah,
correct?
right.
Okay.
And like I say, this one is the same budget,
It's
just more
such
detailed.
Detail, thank you, yeah. And just for information, are you aware when our last budget, when we operated with the budget last?
Last year. We had a budget last year, in our system, I should say.
An approved budget?
I believe it was approved by the board, yes.
Wait a minute. Tom, was it approved?
I don't know as it ever was.
Can you, because there are in the minutes, the past minutes, I can't remember which one, it said there had not been an approved budget for 6 years. If that's not correct, will you let us know? If it is correct, we'll just leave it the way it is. But I think you should be able to verify if there was an approved budget or not. And if there wasn't, I don't know if that's okay, but I'm okay with going forward. But I think I'd like to know if the minutes correct that there was no approved budget for 6 years.
I'll look at the detail. on that
Okay,
and see.
all right,
I'll let
if
know
you
when
wouldn't
I find
mind doing that.
From what I understood, there hasn't.
There
been
has.
6 years,
So-
from what I understood.
Okay, I think that's important. Especially given the circumstances of so many numbers going down,
it. Right.
that I think that's important to, for the ratepayers and for everyone
Those
to
were the
know.
fruitful years.
What's that?
Those were the fruitful years that they didn't have their budget approved. It seems, that's what it looks like.
Okay, just please verify it.
Yep.
And you can do it in your manager's report and just so that it's documented. Thanks. So, to get us to discussion or to get us beyond, when is the budget, when would it have normally been approved? In March, April?
Normally February, I think They presented it in January and they approved it in February.
Okay, so since, in an effort to try to get us beyond this, the year-to-date budget figures that you're working from are based on what, Mike? A percentage from the year before?
Yes,
Okay.
it's based on, I take the year before's actuals, add a percentage based upon our thoughts on, VEPSA had said the purchase power was gonna go up by 3%, so I used that. We
Okay.
expected a 1 or 2% increase in our revenue from costs for our sales of electricity. We expected, with the way inflation was going, we did a 4% on most of our costs.
Mhm.
And it's very easy to say that it's screwed
So-
up because of COVID. It technically
So-
is.
I personally am satisfied with that, and I'll make a motion to accept the budget for discussion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Well, no discussion. I just-
Sorry.
I mean, that's that's my feeling, but other people may have other. I think Mike's explanation with how he came up with these numbers makes sense to me.
Yeah, we went through line by line.
Okay.
And if you look in here where, on the detail where it says, activity code 1, that's your general labor. You'll see that through almost all the accounts.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so like in station expenses account 582, you can see there's a number of different activity codes, but labor is by far the highest one in that account.
That's one of those things.
With the amount of money we spend through VESPA, and I know we purchase all our power through them.
Yep.
Why don't we have a contract with them?
Because it's a membership. We are members. It's not a contractual obligation. We are a member of this consortium of other municipally owned utilities. So there's no contract with them.
No other light departments like ours, I think there's 7 or 8 around the state, they don't have contracts either.
No, they're all
Mr.
members.
Nolan's
Everybody's
here.
member, right, Ken?
Yep.
Yeah, I can speak to this if you'd like.
Yeah.
Again, for the record, Ken Nolan, I'm General Manager of VEPSA. The organization was actually created by the legislature back in 1979. So if you go to Title 30, Chapter 84.
I did that. I don't recommend it.
No,
It's like,
it was written
Yeah.
50 years ago, so it's gobbledygook today. But so we're a state authority. We're nonprofit. The way they set us up, the state created us, but they took no obligation for anything. So the municipalities that chose to be members, in effect, own the organization. You each have a person on our board of directors. You have the right to appoint a director and an alternate. Tom is our director right now. I don't believe you have an alternate that you've appointed.
I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah, we're not, as far as I know, we've not officially heard of an alternate, but that's the board's desire if you want to appoint somebody or not. We operate under bylaws, so any public power entity in the state, and that includes municipal utilities and co-ops, are eligible to be members. Right now, 11 of them are members. When I've got a presentation I'll show you later, lists out who's participating. There are 3 municipals that are not members. Burlington Electric is a strategic, they're kind of half member, half not, because they're large enough, they have staff that does a lot of what we do and they don't want to pay the dues. Hyde Park and Stowe are separate, they don't do work through us, although Stowe participates in a couple of our projects, but we don't work for them on most items. Ironically, WEC is not a member, but we do pretty much all of the work for them for power supply and other things under contract. They've chose to go that direction rather than being a member. So anyone who's a member, it takes a vote of the board to join. And then once you join, you fall under the bylaws and there's a process for getting out if you choose to do that. So there's not really a contract per se, but you join the membership, you agree to operate under the principles the board of directors puts forward, and then you have a process for getting out. And it involves not just power supply. I mean, that's the biggest number you see. But we basically do whatever the board tells us to do that the utilities need. So over the years, we've morphed into all kinds of things. So we do power supply, probably 40% of our work right now. We do regulatory work with the Public Utility Commission, the DPS, rate cases, rate design, the power budget that Michael mentioned, put budgets together, IT support. I believe Tom's talking to us right now about having us take over some of the IT support.
We are going to be joining their IT support on September 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And all that stuff is part of the dues.
Okay. But those kind of assignments that's would come before the board, before it's agreed to send it there, correct?
We're paying for it. We're already paying for it.
We're already paying for it. So,
Yeah.
so I guess my question to follow up with Shannon is how I'd like to see what we're paying for.
Yep.
Can you generate that for us?
Yep.
We're all new, so we don't know.
Yeah, what I suggest is we can certainly provide information on what your fees are going toward.
Oh, that would.
And I would suggest it might be useful for us to sit down at some point in your meeting and just talk through how we operate.
Right. If not this meeting, certainly one soon. I think if we had that information first, then the board might have questions that we wouldn't have tonight.
Yep.
So does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. So
Yeah,
why
absolutely.
don't you generate what you have so that we can see what we're paying for and how, and then once we have a starting place going forward, it'll be easier to discuss things that are coming up and how you can help us.
And so as a member, do you require someone to be on your board, or is that an option?
You could, we've had utilities that did not appoint someone. Jacksonville went 3 years without a board member. The risk you take there is being a member of the organization. A lot of our services and our budget is approved by the board of directors. It doesn't go out to all the communities to be approved by each board. Your person you've appointed to be on our board of directors makes that vote. So if you don't have someone there, you could end up paying for services that you don't feel you need or that you don't want.
And it would behoove us to have a backup.
Most do.
Yeah.
Not everyone has an alternate, but most of the members do.
Okay.
How often are the meetings?
Monthly. It's the first Wednesday of each month. It's during the workday though. It's 9:30 to 1 o'clock-ish usually.
I assume they're hybrid now, or?
Yeah, in person in Waterbury, but we have a hybrid option.
Other business. The approval for Ludlow Electric Light Department to pay the Vermont Child Care contributions of 0.44%.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Discussions of a VESPA contract, which I think
We
we
just
really
did.
just dealt with.
Great.
Moving on. Presenting the board with a power sales agreement for the Stonehouse Solar Project, Vermont, that's the Public Power Supply Authority.
Okay, I got two pieces.
Brett, have you seen this before? No.
That's one. And that's the fourth one. That's what Ken did.
Yeah, are you handing out the presentation?
No, I haven't had that presentation.
So,
Yeah, I do too. And that's why I put it on,
As presented.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a,
excuse me.
In the interest of time, he's been in the interest of time, he's been
yes, and again, because we have not met, I mean, this is our first meeting in Q3. If you can streamline this,
Yep.
because there's a lot we have to go over today.
Got it.
Thank you.
A lot of the information you asked about is in here. I won't talk to it. So I'll just skim a bunch of this. I want to talk specifically about the solar project.
Okay.
So if you just look at the presentation, the discussion of how we were created is on the first page. Second page is the list of municipalities. Third is our board of directors. Fourth page is the services, the whole list. A little bit about how we charge fees. And then a high-level breakdown of our budget is the next page, particularly the components you're paying for. And we'll go into more detail on that as deep as you want to go. So the first thing I want to talk to is the Renewable Energy Standard Tier 2 page. The solar project we're talking about is primarily being discussed as a regulatory compliance issue and a hedge against regulatory costs. So the Vermont legislature put in place what they call the Renewable Energy Standard. That has three components to it. The first component is a requirement that you buy certain portions of renewable energy, can be from anywhere in New England or anywhere that can deliver to New England, any generator that can get power here. That just got changed in the last legislative session to require 100% of your power come from those resources by 2035. And there's a ramp up that happens. Within that, there's a requirement that a smaller portion, 20% of your power by 2035, needs to come from small scale distributed energy resources, which is, frankly, it's code for solar, that are attached to Vermont distribution systems in less than 5 megawatts in size. So it's a very specific procurement requirement. The way they've structured it, the only economical way to meet that requirement is to build solar on your own distribution system. It's very difficult to economically, say, go to Green Mountain Power and build something there and then have the power delivered to you. There are fees that get attached along the way that make it not worth it. So we've been working since 2019, BIF has been working with its members, looking for locations, trying to help facilitate these solar generation construction. And so we've managed a lot of the development amongst the municipals around the state. We usually work through third parties. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a municipal utility to spend the development money doing the permitting and environmental work and everything, because what we find is a third of the time you get through the project and you find out you can't build it. So having developers put that money at risk actually works out better for the municipality. So we end up entering contracts with a third party to do the construction. In this case, I guess one more thing on this, the last bullet there, if we went out and procured these credits that are required, the way it works is for every megawatt hour the generator produces, you get 1 credit. And you have to retire those credits against your obligation. So they take how much your load was, they say, well, if you're 50,000 kilowatt hours or 50 megawatt hours, you need to retire 50 credits, and then you match that up against generation. If we were to go to the market and try to buy those credits from somebody else, they're costing right now, and this has been consistent for the last 5 or 6 years, about $38 to $40 a megawatt hour. That's 3.8 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's very expensive to meet that regulatory requirement on its own. So going to the next page, Ludlow itself doesn't really have any of these tier 2 or the distributed energy credits. You get some credits from the fact if there's net metered solar on your system where the homeowner has agreed to turn over the renewability to the utility, then you can count that toward your requirement. And there's a state procurement called the standard offer that all the utilities get a piece of, and you get a little bit from that, but that's it. Up until now, you've been meeting your requirement simply by buying credits from the other types of members. We're allowed under the statute, anyone who's a member of our organization can meet the requirement, what they call in the aggregate, that allows us to swap internally. So those municipal utilities who have extra solar at the end of the year, they'll sell to others that don't have enough. And you've been on the buying end so far. So we've been talking to Tom in particular about what's available. We've had ongoing conversations with Okemo, with Magris, trying to figure out if there's land available. And eventually Magris indicated they've got some spot behind their mill that they might be interested in making available. And they worked with a third-party developer to look at what that might entail. So the next page is the Stonehouse Solar. This is proposed by a company called MHG Solar out of Manchester. Small shop. This is the kind of size generator that they specialize in. We're talking to them at a couple of locations at this point, but this one's the furthest along by far. They're proposing roughly a 5 megawatt array on Magris land. We would enter an agreement with them where Ludlow Electric would get all of the attributes of that project, so any energy it produces, any effects it has on capacity requirements of transmission, which are other portions of what you have to pay for power supply. Because it would be behind your meter, it actually looks like a load reduction. It's as if it's taking load off your system. And the way the New England markets work, that brings with it some other ancillary benefits, because a lot of the regional costs are allocated based on your share of load versus everybody else. So the lower you can make that load, the less you have to pay. It's just kind of an answer. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's a little side benefit you get. Looking at what they're proposing, the project would produce about 6,900 megawatt hours per year. These solar projects typically, you get the highest amount in the first year, and then there's degradation. You lose about 0.5% a year just with the silicon getting old. But the first year would be 6,900 megawatt hours. the requirement you have right now for that tier 2 or distributed energy resource requirement with the state is about 5,700 megawatt hours would be 10%. So that's what was projected to be your requirement in 2030. So this project would essentially take you from having no coverage and having to buy on the open market to essentially serving yourself. The last few years we'd have to look for something else, but this would take you for the next 5 to 8 years without having to worry about outside purchases.
And then in terms of, would we be able to sell our excess? Because we've been buying from other.
Right. So you'd end up with a choice at that point, because within the statute, there's an ability to roll over credits for up to 3 years. So you could take the excess and move it to the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we do during compliance every year, is we try to balance. Is it more valuable to sell, or do we think it's more valuable to keep it and use it for future compliance?
Right,
What do you
okay.
project the value of those racks are going to be now in years? And
Yeah,
what do you think they're going to drop or increase over time?
right. And it's kind of a balancing act. Some utilities have way overbuilt in the early years because they're
Yeah.
expecting to use it later and they have more to sell.
Okay.
I think you would be on that cusp of it might be worth it to sell, and we'd have to really analyze what's it produce, because you're in the realm where you could roll over and meet the future requirements.
How long do the panels typically last?
They guarantee them typically for 15 years. That's a warranty period. These contracts run 25 years. And if the inverters break, if the panels break, that's all on the developer. That's nothing you need to deal with. Next page, the value proposition. So when we analyze these type of activities, we're using a Monte Carlo analysis. So it's randomly picking variable results, and we run different scenarios against it. In this case, we're looking at the high impact variables here. What are future energy prices going to look like? What are the renewable energy certificate prices? What's the discount rate that you would have to borrow at? What's inflation going to be? And how much is the degradation? We estimate an average 0.5%, but it can be higher or lower. So we put a range of each of those in and then run 100,000 scenarios against it and say, well, what's the likely value of this type of project? In this case, we feel like there's not a whole lot of value on the capacity and transmission side. There's so much solar in New England right now that the peak loads, which is what your capacity and transmission are charged against, are moving out to like the evening hours when solar is producing less. So we're seeing that value really decline. But there's a huge amount of value in the energy and the renewable energy credits. So when we look at this and compare the contract price that you'd have to pay versus the value in the market, or reduction in what your power costs would be, we're seeing the low value, low estimated case, you get a 435,000 net present value out of this project. And it could be as high as $3.3 million under the worst case scenario that we're anticipating. No case did we see where you actually lost money on this. In any of the pricing we've seen, looking back in history and what we're projecting, we didn't see any scenario we'd be worse off. Next page is just a chart showing you year to year what it looks like, and again confirming that in every year, if you look at the top chart, you've got that band at the top. That's the range of value, and the line below would be your PPA cost. And every year, the early years you're a little bit above, and it just expands over time. So on the next page, talk about the process. These things, there's enough of these been done now that it's almost a cookie cutter type approach that you go through. So the way we've structured this, because most of the developers are going to be using third parties to finance. Some of them use hedge funds, some of them use large banks. But they have a financial backer that's going to front the money for this. And And those backers usually like to deal with an entity that has a credit rating. So we find that most of them prefer to use VEPSA as a middle conduit to get the deal done. So the way we typically structure these is VEPSA will enter a contract with the developer. We have a PPA, it's essentially negotiated. It's confidential, but we can provide you with a copy if you'd like to look at it. Just need to keep it as it's under negotiation, so it would be subject to executive session. So we enter a contract with that third party. We enter a contract with Ludlow and essentially pass everything through at our cost. What they charge us, we charge you. The value that's derived from that shows up as reduction in your power costs in the central district, the CDA building that you get from us. Under Vermont law, because this is a longer than 5-year contract, you need state approval to enter the agreement. Normally, we would have to notify the Public Utility Commission we're thinking about entering the contract, get them to say yes, and then we can sign. Because this is a new generator being built, the generator itself needs to get state approval to construct. So the way we handle it is we submit a notice to the Public Utility Commission saying we want to enter a contract, and we ask them for a waiver and say we want the state approval of the contract to be coupled with approval of the construction of the generator. So both happen at the same time. That allows us to sign all the documents in advance, and then when they get their certificate of public good, everything takes effect. If they don't get a state permit, nothing takes effect or happens. There is an interconnection process that you will all have to deal with, and that's basically the generator applying to Ludlow Electric itself to make sure that it's okay to connect to the system. So if there are any upgrades on your system that need to be done, the developer has to pay for that. And there's a study you would have to do to verify that it's okay. That's one of the steps in their getting state approval. They have to show that you're okay with actually doing the building. And then they have to apply for a permit, which itself can take about a year. This is a whole environmental review that has to go through. There's certain studies that can only be done in the spring. So we'd be signing, they'd be doing most of the environmental and preparation work over the next few months, and they'd probably get a permit sometime early to mid-spring, construction being next year if they get through the whole process. And I think that's it. I will say the pricing we have seen, and I can't speak to pricing in open session. If you want to hold this until executive, I'm happy to stay around and dive into it. But the pricing we've seen from these for this project is about 20% below what we've seen most other places. This particular site and these developers have proposed a very good deal.
And this has to be done by 2030.
You're paying on those recs right now. So the
So
sooner you get it done, the more you can save.
Okay.
We'd be looking at, assuming you're okay with it, we'd be looking at actually constructing next year. So you'd start to get the credits toward the end of next year.
Yeah, the next year.
Thank you.
Yes.
I will say that I would like to have seen the agreement before the meeting. Based on your presentations, I don't understand why we wouldn't sign off on this. I haven't quite had the time to actually read through the contract that I'm proposing to adopt. That makes me a little uncomfortable, but I think this project also seems like such an easy win.
I am happy to come back next month. Excuse me. dealing with a cold.
That's what I was like. So we'll probably meet before our regular meeting next month. I agree with Logan. I don't feel comfortable. Your presentation was great, but I feel like I need to read this, just because it's a big deal.
And I'm happy to call a special meeting, that we can
Yes.
sit down and just make this happen. I agree, like, it sounds like all on board, but
Yes, and we don't want to hold up the process and any
no.
What is your timeline? I mean, is there a specific date that you'd want a decision by, or is there sooner better?
2 months ago.
What it sounds like.
Yeah,
Right.
we were well down the path with the previous board. They just never got to the point of actually voting.
Yep.
So we're kind of starting over at this point.
Yeah.
So the developer is aware, the board changed. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
they're anxious to get going, but there's no firm deadline. You need to be comfortable. It's a 25-year contract. So you
Yes.
need to be comfortable that you're getting, you understand what you're getting into.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as much time as you need, if you need me to come back and talk through details, whatever it takes, I'm happy to do.
I think once I've had a chance to read this, if I have any questions, I can ask you directly or whatever.
My
So-
contact information is the last sheet, so feel free to use it.
Okay,
So
so I don't
we can
think you
move
need
it
to
the
stay
next
for
meeting.
the executive session.
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Ken, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
No
Nick.
problem.
Okay, possible items for next meeting. This is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the purchase agreement process, spending limits. We've already talked about that, but that's
Yeah.
a big thing that we're.
Okay, at this point, we're gonna go into executive discussions of personnel, legal representation, the union IBEW 300, and refinancing of heavy equipment.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Second.
Thank you.
thank you.
Do we need,